In this video, I'm going to break down 43 things that caught my eye with the new Madden beta. And on top of that, including in those 43 things, I actually have 12 things that I found from the franchise mode that just got unveiled today. So if you didn't get access to the beta and you want to know about franchise mode specifically, then this video is for you. So let's talk about the first few things that I noticed when playing just the regular gameplay. So number one was some of the pregame scenes when actually entering the game were different. Most of them were the same or either like different angles, but there were some in there that kind of spice up the monotony. If you are familiar with how the on the field camera was whenever players were warming up, a lot of that stuff's the same, but it seems like some of the graphics of like the quarterback being introduced or the head coach, some of that stuff's different. Overall, it's mostly the same, but there are a few new scenes. The second thing is that player pads look like they're missing. I don't know if it's just because this is the beta and this is still a very watered down version of what we're going to get in Madden 23. It looks like they're wearing a t-shirt like I'm wearing right now, a linebacker or an offensive lineman. There is nothing out here for shoulder pads. It's very weird. The models kind of, I don't know if they just not haven't put that in or they're trying to go a different route with making the players look more slim. I know there's a lot of emphasis on players now using smaller, thinner shoulder pads, but you more see that in skills positions, not on your bigger guys. So I just don't think it's been added in yet. And I hope to God that it's going to get put in before the game actually releases. Now, the third thing, models and characters, they look all the same graphically to me. There's no update. The players don't look more defined in the face. Like the hair on their face doesn't look more sharp. You know, the veins, the sweat, all that stuff looks exactly the same, unfortunately. Number four, scoreboard is updated. So above, when you're playing the game, the scoreboard does look a little bit different. It's very minimal now. It's mostly white with very little color and very minimal fonts and numbers. You might like it, you might not. I actually prefer what they had last year in that. The fifth thing is that the play UI selection graphics is exactly the same. So the UI, it's gonna be exactly like it was last year. It looks like it hasn't changed whatsoever. And before we go on, I just want to clarify and say that I do understand that a lot of these things are probably or subject to change when the game gets released. So if I do say something that kind of disappoints you, don't get too upset about, you know, it not being added in there, because there's a very good chance it might be getting added in later on right before they release. Or we know EA, there's also a good chance that it might not change at all. But if you do want to stay updated on things that are getting changed, make sure to subscribe down below. All right, the sixth thing is I did notice there were some glitchy animations on the ball carriers. One of the emphasis this year from Madden was they're trying to introduce more physics-based animations. And I did notice that there were times that some of them were smooth, but there were also a lot that seemed very like herky-jerky is the only way I can explain it. Collisions seemed to kind of almost glide together and then happen. And then the animation itself looked like it was physics-based, quote unquote, but it wasn't smooth. So that's not necessarily a good thing. I'm sure that they'll get that ironed out, but there's something to be aware of. Number seven is I did not notice really a lot of difference in just actual physics in the game, meaning like players turning routes, cutting, moving, speed, you know, acceleration. Didn't really notice a whole lot on that front. Number eight, safeties. Safeties are playing smarter. One of the big things of Madden 22 is the safeties were just everywhere except where you needed them to be, or they just weren't even reacting to the ball being thrown down the field. Throwing is a lot harder right now, currently in this Madden. I mean, I was throwing picks left and right. And if any of you know, any of my players, you know, I'm not the best at throwing. I really specialize in running the ball, but it was pretty difficult. And safeties are reacting a lot better than they previously were. Number nine is that there is a new touchdown UI. So when you score a touchdown, there is a graphic that comes across that looks a lot different than previous years. Not really a big of a change, but something to spice it up. Number 10, same repetitive slowdowns after big plays. It's one of the things that kind of annoys me for whatever reason. You know, whenever you complete like a 30-yard pass or you make a big run or you intercept the ball, there's like this on the replay side, there's this slowdown that happens to make it look more dramatic. All that's still happening. I know you can turn down the amount of replays that are done, and I recommend doing that just because it gets super repetitive. Number 11 is that the crowd animations are still the same. And while this may not be big, it just kind of hits on the point that EA sometimes forget the little things, spicing up little things to make the game seem more realistic. The fans, again, very flat, doing the same things. You know, none of them are acting independently of one another. It seems like it's like, you know, you have 4 sets of fans throughout the whole stadium doing the same thing. So unfortunately, crowds are still the same. Number 12, Player movement on defense feels the same as well. There was a lot of people upset with linebacker play. A few Maddens ago, it seems like linebackers should just glide out of anywhere and make interceptions. The last few Maddens, it seems like they're stuck in water whenever you're throwing, and it feels kind of that same way now. Now, that's a double-edged sword. You don't want your linebackers to be like ball hawks, but at the same point, you still, if you read and react on time, you still want to be rewarded for that. Defense is still a little slow, either strafing or coming out of their strafe, and it could have also just been the players that I were using. Number 13, player movement while being the ball carrier is actually smoother. So contrary to number 12, which defense seems still to be a little sluggish, I feel like the ball carrier cutting, moving, turning quarters, that feels a lot more fluid. It actually feels a lot more like Madden, like 20-ish, you know, where you can move and cut and juke and you could turn on a dime. And then it seems when they went to next gen, it was really slow turning. They moved it back towards the older Maddens, those are old gen. So if you were a fan of that, you're really gonna like the improvements that they made for the ball carrier. Number 14, transitions when actually performing a kickoff is different. So, you know, the field will shift, but it'll actually like kind of slow down. And I actually like that part of it. It's dynamic, it feels cool, and it's just kind of creates a different experience than just, you know, kickoffs are already boring enough, and they kind of just spiced it up a little bit. Not really a big thing, but they did change up that camera angle. Number 15, user offensive line protection is non-existent. I mean, nothing. You do not get pass protection, and I used a variety of teams, some teams with really good offensive line play and some teams with terrible offensive linemen. And let me tell you, you better get the ball out of there quick. So you couple that with the fact that DBs are reacting really well to you throwing the ball, and your offensive line is not protecting you whatsoever. It makes throwing extremely difficult in Madden 23 right now for the beta. Number 16, interior line play for the CPU is weak. So for the CPU, offensive line for the tackles, pretty hard to get around them and collapse the pocket, right? But if you bull rush right up the middle with a blitzing safety linebacker, or if you have a good defensive tackle like Aaron Donald or Dominican Sue or someone like that, Fletcher Cox, man, it seems like you can almost get to the quarterback at will. And because now they put more emphasis on pressuring quarterbacks, making throws more errant, I saw a lot more quarterbacks missing open guys that you wouldn't normally see. And that brings up number 17, which is that the quarterback did miss some open wide receivers. Now the caveat for that is that you have to apply some pressure. So it was good to see that in the CPU, knowing that the CPU is not going to automatically complete every single short pass or crosser or every time someone's open, because in the NFL that just doesn't happen all the time. Number 18, the user DB ball reaction is quicker on deep routes and outside routes. So whenever you're controlling the DB, or even if you aren't controlling it, but they're on your team, whenever the ball is thrown to the outside or deep, it seems like the safeties are reacting a lot quicker. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying, is that the DBs seem to react better, especially the safeties. And that brings me up to number 20, which is the user DB ball reaction is the same in the middle of the field in crossers and drag routes. It seems like they react very slow, and it's easy for the CPU to complete that. So just be aware of that going into Madden 23. Your defense will react quicker, deep routes and outside, but up the middle and crossers, in routes, drag routes, they're acting exactly the same. Number 20, another thing that I noticed about blocking is that it is still not smart in open space. So you're doing a screen, you're doing a sweep, you're doing a wide receiver bubble route or whatever. Blocking down the field in open space is abysmal right now. It's quite ridiculous how bad the logic is. You'll have someone maybe like Trent Williams on the outside, you know, one-on-one with a DB, and he just won't even go anywhere near them. It's quite ridiculous. Number 21, return blocking does seem better. One of the things that I noticed in previous Maddens that kickoff returns, man, you might as well just take a knee. I noticed even, and I played on all Madden with base sliders, just FYI, that I was getting to the 30-yard line, 35-yard line, a lot more consistent so far in the beta. Number 22, on wild throws, receivers are still not challenging the 50-50 balls. One of the big things about, you know, this Madden and passing is that you can kind of place it where you want to. They're kind of giving you that emphasis. What I'm noticing is that your receivers are still not fighting for that ball. So if the ball is kind of misplaced or you throw it inaccurately, your wide receiver, tight end, running back will still carry down the field with their route. They won't come back and try to get it, while the DB linebacker will just come out of nowhere and intercept it. And you know what I'm talking about if you've been playing Madden. It's been happening forever. So those 50-50 balls are still not getting challenged by your receivers. Number 23 is that I noticed this. Maybe it was in the game last year and I just didn't notice it, or was updated at some point, but there were actual advertisements in the stadium. I did notice there were some advertisements for like some fake colas or like cleaners and things like detergents and stuff in the field. Again, step in the right direction. Not really a big thing, but it's something that has been asked for by the community. Number 24, and this was something that I talked about last year, is that there are no penalties in this game whatsoever. Yes, there are sliders. Yes, there are referees. Yes, if you just blindside a quarterback to throw it, they will throw a penalty. But I played 2 games, 6-minute quarters, all Madden. I didn't have one penalty call the entire game. And there were articles coming out last year about, you know, how EA didn't want there to be a lot of penalties. They were intentionally doing this because they thought it'd slow down the game. But when you call yourself a simulation, realistic game, sporting game, and penalties are such a huge thing in the NFL, right? Like they decide games, whether we want them to or not. And when you even try to increase the sliders and you still don't get defensive pass interference or holding or false starts that happen all the time in the game, to me, it's not a good sign. Number 25, I did notice that there were some different tackling animations. I think that's good. And I didn't do anything different. I went into this and played exactly the same way that I played Madden 22, just to see if anything would come out. A lot of times in Madden, they introduce new techniques and features, but you have to do it a certain way to get it. So I wanted to see if that was the case this time around, and I did notice that there were different tackling animations. Number 26, new passing feature gives the user the feel that you can put the ball anywhere. That's a big thing. It gives you the feel that you can put the ball anywhere. And it's happening. You are doing it, but it's the same thing as Madden 22, Madden 21. In Madden 21 and 22, you didn't get to see where the ball was going to go before you threw it. You might want to throw it outside and there was kind of, in your opinion, an RNG factor that happened. With this, I'm noticing that if you're trying to throw it high or low to the outside, all those throws are the same. What's happening here is that they're just now showing you where the ball is going to be thrown. The mechanic isn't new. It's just they've, gave it a new paint job and it looks different and it gives you the feeling that you're controlling more, but really you're not. Is it cool? Yes, but I do think that after playing one season in the franchise or a few games, you won't even notice it going forward. Number 27 is that I did notice that there were a little bit more hand fighting between the DB and wide receiver, and this was talked about in the trailer. You see some jostling. You see the defenders constantly trying to touch the wide receiver as they go down the field. That's a cool thing. I don't know. Again, it didn't translate to there being more penalties being called or really any 50-50 ball challenges when the ball's up in the air. I didn't see that get changed any, but it's more of just something you probably won't notice unless you look at it in replay, unfortunately, or if you are using a wide receiver DB as like in a career mode or something. Number 28, I did think that route running looked a lot more realistic to me. I did say that the player movement while being a ball carrier was a little bit smoother, and I did say that physics kind of looked the same, but I did notice on some of the routes, it looked more like All Pro Football 2K8. I like that. I think some people are probably going to notice it and be like, man, that's actually a step in the right direction. I didn't notice it on anything else except for just route running though. Number 29, sideline animations are all the same. There's one of the things that I've just haven't figured out for Madden is that there's not a lot of like interactions with your players outside of the field, meaning like if they run outside, you don't see them like running over like water coolers or running into their own players or running, and then you'll see this in NFL all the time. They'll just like sit down on the bench instead of like crashing into it. So all that sideline animations are still the same, unfortunately. Number 30, interceptions are everywhere. Kind of already alluded to this. You're going to get in this, you're going to play it, and you're going to throw a ton of interceptions. You're just going to have to adjust like you kind of have to do every year from Madden, but I do think they need to turn down the interceptions quite a bit. And the last thing, just for gameplay, that I noticed when I played the very first game, I set it as a Super Bowl. Maybe I should have done this for franchise, but it doesn't matter. The Super Bowl celebration is the same. There are very few tweaks. It looks the exact same Really all they did was change up the camera angle. All right, so now I've got 12 more things that I noticed that are specific to just the franchise mode. So number one for franchise, the loading screen into the franchise mode is different. What it does is it gives you like this glitchy franchise text that glitches in and out while it's loading, and it kind of does that for all of the loading screens. The second thing is the new interface in the menu is a little different. Everything's kind of in the same spot, but it looks like the fonts are updated. The color scheme is different. There is a new UI, but everything's kind of in the same spot. It's kind of new, but it's kind of the same. A big thing that was talked about, and this is number 3, is trading. There are still only 3 trade slots per team. There was rumors out there that might be 6 per team, and again, that might get added in later, but as of right now, there's still only 3. Number 4, motivations for players, free agents, and re-signings. So one of the things you'll notice once you click on a player, if you scroll all the way to the right, if you hit like R1, right bumper, whatever it is for your controller, you'll notice that there's now this thing called motivations. And there are 3 things per player that a player looks at when they're thinking about re-signing with you, or what will determine the likelihood that they will sign with you. So this also is big for free agent signings. The first one is income tax. The second thing is team history, meaning like how successful has this team been in the past. The third thing is, are they a Super Bowl contender? Basically meaning, is the team talented or not? You know, so if you have someone like, one of the first player I looked at was Julio Jones, who wanted like 16 million, by the way, to sign up for a 1-year deal. It's not happening, Julio. But you know, you have a bar and it moves from left to right on how much that is influenced in their decision making. So it's a cool little thing. I think it's something that's interesting, and that something, it's a step in the right direction. Baby steps for EA here. Number 5, coordinators are not correct at the moment. Again, I don't get why they can't have your offensive and defensive coordinators in the game. I don't know if it's something has to do with licensure or liability for NFL. I don't know, but all the coordinators seem to be incorrect at the moment. Number 6, position upgrades. The upgrading system is still the same, unfortunately. Number 7, the quarterback now has a red jersey in practice mode. Again, this isn't a big thing. It's not going to change the way you look at Madden, but again, it's a step in the right direction of making things realistic. Number 8, simulating weeks takes a very, very long time. This is bad news for anyone that wants to simulate. Right now, since we have been doing this video, I have been trying to simulate 1 week of the regular season, and this has been 46 minutes and it hasn't simulated the week again. Now, this has always been kind of like a bug in Madden where you simulate, sometimes it doesn't work. You got to back out and go back in. But not only that, it takes a long time to sim a season. It's taken on average, at bare minimum, around a minute and a half for me to simulate from week to week. You take that over the course of an entire season, you know, my 20-30 minutes you're going to spend just waiting on the game to sim through the weeks. If you're big into simming, it's going to take a while unless this gets sped up between now and the initial release. Number 9, the season goals, they seem to be updated and added. So now you can say that you're going to make the playoffs and win the Super Bowl. I don't know if that was in there before. Let me know down in the comments. I'm not entirely sure. I just wanted to say that. It seems like that was added. I never really cared about it because there really wasn't any big repercussions of getting those wrong. Number 10, scouting, unfortunately seems to be exactly the same. But there is one thing that they changed. The key ratings for the players will now show up on the big board. So, you know, whenever you scout a player, let's say you're scouting a quarterback and you want to know their arm accuracy, their arm strength, and you have those traits unlocked. The only way that you could look at them previously, you would have to click on the person or click on prospects, click on the player, then scroll over and find it. It took a long time because then if you were trying to figure out, you know, between 3 quarterbacks, which one you were going to draft, you'd have to back all the way back out and do the same thing again. Now they've added that to the right on the big board, big draft board for each player so that you can quickly see their top skills. So I think that's a quality of life change. A lot of people might not notice, but it's good. Again, that was really good. It's probably the biggest thing that I noticed for franchise mode, and I don't really know if that's obviously not a good thing. Number 11, the face scans again are still very hit or miss. Some players who should have face scans are not in. Again, maybe they get implemented in, but they look terrible still. Some of them look really, really great, and I'm doing this on the PS5, so it should be the best graphics available for Madden. They still are missing quite a few for some of the other players. And the last thing, number 12, is that the press conferences feel more real. And what I mean by real is that the atmosphere in the press conferences feel better. There's more sounds, more clicking of lights, flashes, and the player or the coaches they act and move more realistically. And what I mean by that is that whenever you're talking or you're sitting here, you just don't sit and not move your mouth. You kind of like move your mouth, flip your tongue through your mouth, you know, kind of act like you're chewing or move your jaw or whatever. And the coaches are kind of doing that. Again, does that matter? No, but it is something that I noticed. All right, so there you go. There are 43 things that I noticed from doing the beta. If you're interested in any other things, make sure to let me know down in the comments. I'll answer them as quickly as I can. I'll go through the beta and try to find it for you and let you know. So let me know down in the comments if you have any other questions. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to stay up to date on all Madden content. I will catch everybody later. Peace out.